Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there. And I'm going to go and bask in the glory of Slash later on. Actually, that sounds terrible.
That sounds like some bizarre kink fetish, I think. Yeah, please don't Google that to try and find the live video that I'm talking about, because otherwise you're going to be in a world of pain.
Greetings! Welcome to another episode of the Guitar Smarts podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. This week, Kiran and I are debating, or at least talking about, the songs that have changed our playing forever. So we're not just talking about artists or albums or people that we've enjoyed listening to over time. We're talking about specific songs that we can remember as having a profound effect on our playing. So this is a really interesting conversation, and we both really enjoyed this, and I think we both went away inspired to listen to each other's music that we'd mentioned, which is really great. One thing I must say, I've got to correct myself. Listening back to this whilst editing, I mentioned a Steely Dan record that Jeff Porcaro played on, and I said it was the first Steely Dan album. It wasn't actually. It was Katie Lied, which is the fourth album by Steely Dan, so just got to hold my hands up and correct myself there. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Please come over to our social media pages over at facebook.com/guitarsmarts and also on Instagram at guitar_smarts. We really like to interact with our listeners there, so if you've got questions for us or comments about the show, anything you've listened to, anything that you'd like to hear, come and drop us a line or a message over there. And remember as well, if you like what you're listening to and you're enjoying this podcast, then please subscribe in your favourite podcast app so that you never miss a future show, and that really helps us to grow the podcast as well. Anyway, let's get to it. How are you doing, Kiran?
Yeah, I'm really good, mate. I'm really good. It's the end of another week, but yeah, we've got a bank holiday coming up for us here in the UK, so it means a bit of an extra long weekend. And I don't know about you, Matt, but my kids are on that kind of half-term break from school next week. It varies around the country, doesn't it, sometimes? But yeah? Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm going to take some time off as well next week to spend with the kids. So that'll be cool.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's been a good week for me too. Been very busy guitar-wise and work-wise. Done a bit of modding this week, which has been good. Got a new pickup in the Strat, which I'm just astounded by. Just utterly astounded by this new pickup. So I've got a Iron Gear jailhouse rail in the bridge position. Never thought I'd ever go for like a Hot Rails type humbucker, single coil sized humbucker in a bridge position, because I kind of thought it'd probably end up being a bit too hot for the Strat, but it isn't at all. That's the thing I'm astounded by, is that the output of it doesn't seem any more hot than the normal single coil I had in it. It doesn't seem any kind of more saturated or anything like that. If anything, it just sounds like it's a slightly more muscular sounding pickup than like that thinness from the bridge pickup's gone away, but it still sounds like a bridge pickup. It just sounds so strong. It's such a cool sounding pickup. I'm over the moon with it. It's brilliant. It's the best mod I've ever done on the Strat. Not that I've done many things, but it's transformed the guitar for me. It's great.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really great. And what a beautifully, I mean, you did it really quickly. Well, to your credit. So it was a quick mod.
You just pop the scratch plate off, and it's easy to work on the scratch plate. Changing a pickup on a Strat is nice and easy, especially because I'm not using the coil split on it. So it's just the screen and the ground onto the back of a pot, and then just replacing the connection on the switch, and then tidy everything up with a bit of, a few cable ties, make sure everything's where it should be, and flip it back over. It really is, between string changes, it's a 15-minute job. So yeah, and it's just superb.
Oh, that's really brilliant. They're great pickups. We've mentioned Iron Gear pickups a couple of times, and I think they're getting a good name for themselves. And
incredible value.
Yeah. I
mean, that pickup was less than 30 quid, which is like, $45, something like that, $40, $50 in the US. And it just sounds astounding. Just really, really great pickup. That's been my week, really, in terms of guitars, doing that mod and doing a bit of guitar playing at home in the evening, just enjoying playing this week, which is great because the week before I was just too busy. What about you? Because you've got your new guitar. Have you managed to do anything yet with that this weekend?
I haven't, to be honest, mate. I've had it a week or so now. It's lovely, but I'm aching to do some of the mods and things to it that I wanted to do. So this is the gold top that I recently acquired, and I've got all of the stuff now. It's all arrived. So I'm gonna change out the pickups again for a set of iron gears. I've got all of the pots that I want to swap out, and the new orange drop caps that I'm going to put in. Awesome. Bit of vintage wiring in it, and a setup, and it'll be good to go. I mean, it's a great guitar anyway, but this is just about me making a few tweaks to it while I've still getting to know the guitar, because if I put them off, I'll end up just not doing them anytime soon. So it's that kind of, it's like that thing of moving into a new house, isn't it, where you go, right, shall I paint and decorate it now or live with it for a bit? But I'm kind of like, no, I want to get this one out as a gigging guitar, so I'm just going to make the mods to it probably next week or so, and then get it out there. So yeah, bit of modding on that one.
Awesome. Just looking at it hanging behind you there now as well, I'm astounded by the colour of it, because it looks like such an authentic gold top colour, Yeah. I think some copies that I've seen by other manufacturers before, maybe it's been a little bit too gold, a little bit too sparkly, not quite gold enough maybe, but that just looks spot on. It's great.
Yeah, they've nailed it on this one, because that gold top, as you say, Matt, quite rightly, the kind of original kind of gold tops had a variance in how they reflected light depending on what angle you looked at them, and sometimes they would look very orangey gold, sometimes very sparkly gold. And I think one of the reasons they became really popular is the way that they look when they're on stage, right? You put a set of stage lights on them and it really kind of pops, in the same way like that the TV yellow Gibson colour. You look at it in person and it's just a kind of standard canary yellow type colour, but when you started to see it on broadcasts and things, it really kind of stood out. So anyway, going to do a few mods to that while it's still new, so I can get it out there. And then I had a late night last night because I was rehearsing or auditioning rather for this rock band, another rock band that I've been trying out for. And it went really well. It sounded brilliantly tight. Yeah, it sounded really great. I had a really good session with them. And so I'm in the band and I've got a phenomenal amount of song. Yeah, no, they
awesome.
It was really good. It went really well. Nice bunch of guys, just the right amount of gigging frequency.
Yeah.
They're playing at a really, really decent level for what I would say are non-professional musicians, right? Not out there every single day, but to a really high standard. And so, yeah, I've got my work set cut out now. I learned one set, but I've got another set and a bit to learn for the next couple of weeks. So yeah, next rehearsal's Tuesday. So yeah, it's, do you know what though? It's put me right back into that place of having that going on in my life as well as everything else. It's just like, oh yeah, I forgot juggling all of this, a gig diary and work and kids and all of that. It's just oh yeah, that's quite a lot now, isn't it? Yeah. But it's getting that. It's going to be great.
To be busy. That's brilliant. I'm over the moon for you. Awesome.
Oh, well,
you should be out there gigging.
We both should, right? And you've got gigs in the diary already lined up for the rest of the year as well. So yeah, it started to feel a little bit like things returning to normal, albeit socially distanced kind of rehearsals and stuff like that. So
good stuff. Well, let's crack on with this week's agenda. So this week we are reflecting on songs that have made the most impact in our guitar playing in our lives. So we've spoken previously, haven't we, about influences and who, as artists as well as guitarists, have influenced us the most over the time that we've been musicians. But this, to me, feels slightly different. This is more about specific songs or music from artists that have had an impact on our playing. So it might be a guitar solo that sent your technique down to different path. It might be a combination of things like production and tone from a particular guitarist that changed the way you approach the guitar, or it could be something entirely different that inspired us to progress our playing. That may have been a watershed moment. So that's what we want to discuss this week. And for me, there's a few songs. And what about you? Is there a whole list of things that have sent you down different paths, or is it a few songs? Or
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm sure there are. I'm sure if I sat here for an hour, I could quite easily create like a list of stuff. It reminded me about when we did like the Desert Island Gear or the Desert Island, albums podcasts quite a few episodes ago now. The process of doing that is almost kind of like if you really think about it and sit down and almost like write a pros and cons column and really make it into some sort of academic process, you can end up with a really comprehensive list and really overthink it. But oftentimes, the best way is just to kind of clear your mind and go, right, 3 songs, go, name them. What are they? Keeping that brief in mind, right? Not just, are these your favorite songs, or, do you love the person that played them? It's like, why these songs? And I think the thing that you've talked about is, what did they do for your playing or approach to tone? So that's what I thought of, and actually very quickly came up with 3, 4, I'm going to stretch it slightly, 4 songs that I think, summarize that for me. So maybe for our audience, it'll, I'm sure a lot of these tracks may be familiar to them. Maybe some of these tracks aren't. So go and search them out and have a listen and see if you agree with what we are saying in terms of what these songs may do for somebody's playing or approach to tone in the way that it did for us. It'd be great to hear if people think the same in that regard, or can tell us some of the songs that it wasn't these songs for them, but it was a bunch of other songs that did a similar thing. So yeah, I've got my songs.
You got your songs, so have I. And I'm the same. I found it quite easy to pick a few that for me really stand out as important moments in my kind of listening career, as being a listener of music as well as being a musician. It's quite, you think how much music you've listened to over your life. It's quite interesting to think that it's so easy to pull out just a few songs that are important in your kind of history as a guitarist. So shall I kick off?
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Sorry to interrupt this super interesting conversation. However, if you've made it this far, maybe you should subscribe to the Guitar Smarts podcast. Go and do that now, and then let's get right back to it. The first one for me is, and I'm kind of doing this in chronological order as well. So this is coming right from the beginning of me being a guitarist. It's no secret now, obviously, I'm a big Clapton fan. This is the only obvious one, though, in my list, right? The rest of them, I think, are less obvious. But I started playing guitar after hearing Clapton Unplugged. And I loved that album so much because of the songs that are in it and his acoustic playing,
Yeah,
and that got me into some of the other stuff that was available at the time, like, the 24 Nights, Journeyman, the stuff that he did in the 80s. So I'd say the first kind of year of my guitar playing was that kind of era of Clapton. And then my dad bought From the Cradle. And obviously that's just his pure blues album that he did. And the song off that album for me, which for me is still probably one of my favourite guitar tracks and guitar solos, is 5 Long Years, where he does this double chorus guitar solo in the middle. And it's just the most, it's just epic, like Strat blues tone, amazing. It's that classic classic Fender mid boost sound on his Strat. And the solo is just absolute gold. And I must have spent weeks and weeks and weeks after that just trying to learn that guitar solo. And that's what sent me down a blues path for years after that. In fact, I'd still say, even now, if if I was to kind of pinpoint why I like the blues so much and all the blues artists I've ever listened to, it comes from that one experience of not just that album, but that particular song, you know. And it's a great track as well. It's a fantastic performance of a blues song. It's a really kind of fiery blues number, kind of mid-tempo, on the verge of being a slow blues. But he kind of sings it and performs it almost angrily, which he's meant to, because the song's about being kind of, you know, losing your
hard done by,
after,
and
being hard done by a woman after working so hard for 5 long years, you know. And he sings it so angrily, and you get to the end of it, and he's doing that interesting ending where he's singing one line over and over before a hit by the band, and it's so angry. It's just such a brilliant performance all around. And that song is a watershed moment for me. So that's 5 Long Years by Eric Clapton, from the Cradle album, which I think was 1994. And that's the first one for me.
What a great choice, buddy! What an absolutely great choice. That's really interesting in terms of, well, it's just because I came at it in a different way, that album and that song. And so to hear you talking about that was almost the catalyst for you to then go off in a direction with blues, and you know, I totally can understand why that would be the case. I agree with everything that you said. It's a quintessential, you know, track cover by him and you can hear that anger and that kind of frustration in the way that he sings it, and the playing is flawless. I remember hearing that track, and this was something I think I've spoken about in the podcast before, where I was really heavily into blues already at that point. I'd loved Clapton, but my dad had kind of had all the Cream era Clapton stuff and Blues Breakers stuff. So that's the Clapton that I knew. And even some of the kind of 80s rock stuff like the August album and stuff like that. So I hadn't really appreciated that album and what Clapton's blues playing was fully about. And so I remember, and it was actually a guest and friend of the show, Damien Lodrick, who put that album in my hand as a cocky 16-year-old kid that I was at the time, and said, I know you think Clapton is not the pinnacle of blues playing, and you know all the other blues people that you revere, but listen to this album. I was like, all right, I'll give it a listen. And I remember, as I said before, you know, calling him up at like 1 a.m. or something after just listening to that album like all night, and just going, how wrong was I? This man is just the blues personified. It was a proper wake up call. So yeah, and what a versatile musician to be able to cover that all those different genres of pop and rock, but ultimately he's steeped in the blues, right? And,
exactly. That's what showed in that album. I mean, that whole album is, I mean, I've picked the cherry from the bunch really, but that whole album is just fantastic. Some other songs on that album that are really incredible songs, not just from a performance of the song perspective, but from a guitarist perspective, are things like Someday After a While, Tore Down, I think it's Groaning the Blues, which is the last one. Sinner's Prayer, which is a Ray Charles song. He did a fantastic version of that where he's playing without a pick. You know, he's playing fingerstyle. Reconsider. Well, just every song.
Just all of them.
Just all of them. They're just so great. And it's effectively, and my dad has pointed this out to me because my dad listens. Hi, Dad. Effectively, this is a live album. It's not in front of an audience, but it was recorded live. Every song, and I think if you read the liner notes, there's only one song where the dobro, or the dobro, however you say it, the slide acoustic he's playing is overdubbed. That's the only song that has an overdub. Every song is performed live as a band in the studio as a complete take. There's no overdubs or anything in that whole album. So it is a live album. It's a live album performance, and it's Clapton from the
Wow, that makes it even more special.
Yeah, exactly.
What a great fact from your dad. What's your dad's name?
John Oliver. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's as big a Clapton fan as I am. But yeah, he pointed that out to me a while back when I think I was talking to him about live albums, and he said From the Cradle. I was like, of course, yeah, it is. They were all live performances in the studio. It's incredible.
Brilliant.
There's some good documentaries on YouTube about when he was recording around that time. You can see them performing. I think it was in Olympic Studios in London. that
I've
they
seen
did
some
it.
of
It
that.
was a massive studio, or was a massive studio. I don't think it's a studio anymore. I think it's a block of flats, unfortunately. Could be wrong. I don't know. Possible nonsense alert, people.
Yeah, we should get your dad to fact check that one.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's John, can you correct Matt either way if he's wrong about this?
Exactly. Go and do the research and let us know. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
So what about you? What give us one of yours. What's one of the important ones?
I'll again, I won't labour on this one because I have mentioned this band and this album as a kind of formative album in my kind of youth. But as a similar approach to you, thinking back to when I was young and, really starting out in guitar playing, and I had a couple of years of classical guitar training before I'd ever even considered listening to anything other than pop music and the bits of classical music that I was playing. So, and then I think somebody must have played it to me. I don't think I found it on my own, but Metallica were obviously becoming a huge band at that time in the kind of late 80s through early 90s, and the Black Album came out, and that was doing the rounds with all the cool kids at school. And I remember I don't know where it was, in the music room or somewhere at school, and I remembered hearing the opening melody to a song called "The Unforgiven," which starts with this fingerstyle classical kind of played. It's like an A minor kind of arpeggiated chord in that kind of open chord position. And I remember hearing it and just thinking, I can play that. Because I remember a lot of the kids that were into guitar and things at the time were, learning, rock and metal and, power chords and stuff like that. But they hadn't had classical kind of training or fingerstyle training. I mean, bearing in mind, we were 14-year-old kids at the time, right? So none of us were accomplished guitarists. But I remember getting quite a lot of attention because I heard that piece and I could just play it. It was like an easy thing to me because that's the technique that I knew. And then obviously the track soon kicks in with these kind of monstrous power chords and things. But I remember opening my musical sensibilities to a totally different genre. I hadn't considered rock or metal or anything like that at that stage, really. Not heavier stuff. And so I just remember thinking, wow, you've got these bands like Metallica that, and I think at the time when they were making that album, they were quite nervous and uncertain as to how some of those tracks would translate for their audience, which was kind of a hefty following of kind of thrash metal kind of fans. And some of the tracks are very melodic and very well orchestrated pieces, and they were kind of concerned as to whether that was going to make them look like they'd sold out to their genre. But for people like me, it did the opposite. It made me actually engage with them and go, wow, okay, tracks like The Unforgiven and Nothing Else Matters, where I could access the rest of their back catalogue, but through those very accessible tracks. And from a guitar player's perspective, there's some really good technique in there that to me is like a 14-year-old classical guitarist kind of I linked into. So yeah, that track, The Unforgiven, I proceeded to then kind of do a little arrangement of that entirely on the classical guitar. And I think then went on to try and teach myself the entirety of that album on a classical guitar because that's all I had at the time. And I managed to borrow a tab book off my friend. And then that was it. That was then just like the start of I would say a lost youth into discovering all these genres that I just hadn't really appreciated before. Rock, metal, and all of that. So yeah.
That whole album, the Black Album by Metallica, is an absolute classic. One of my favourites as well in the the whole hard rock metal genre. It's just it's absolutely superb. You mentioned Nothing Else Matters. That's one of my favourite tracks of theirs. In fact, they did a version of that, I think, with like the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, didn't they? For that,
they did
S&M album that they did, I think, years ago, and that is epic, absolutely epic. I remember my brother. My brother was into Metallica as well. He might still be, actually. I don't know. But he liked Metallica too. And I first listened to Metallica. The Black Album wasn't the first album of theirs I listened to. It was Load, which was, I think, about 95. I think it was the album after the Black Album. And that was almost more rootsy and kind of a little bit more kind of hard rock than metal. And I love that album. That's one of my favourite albums of theirs of all time. But that's a great choice, The Unforgiven, because that is another epic metal track, you know. But you're right, that album, they really kind of, I think, like you said, some people would criticise them for kind of not being heavy enough, but I think I don't think they were less heavy. I think they were slightly more sophisticated, almost.
Yes.
You know, I think they were showing the life experiences, maybe, and you know the changes in their influences or what they wanted to do artistically, without actually really changing their abilities or the kind of intensity. I thought that was a superb album.
I think it speaks to, as musicians, they're all individually talented, but I think, particularly in James Hetfield, he's got a really incredible sense of melody and harmony.
Yeah.
And there is and that album, I think, was very much, hey, this is my opinion, I could be completely wrong, but I think that album was also the result of being heavily influenced and guided in the right way by the producer. It was Bob Rock, and Bob Rock had done some incredible rock producer, musician in his own right, but there's a great documentary which I wish I had. I don't know if you can get it on DVD or anything like that, but I had it on VHS back in the day and literally wore out the copy of it, and it's called A Year and a Half in the Life, and it was like before reality TV. Right, this is going back decades now. Yeah. Right? This is before reality TV was a thing. Metallica had a film crew following them around for the making of that album. And I think they split the video or the VHS into 2 tapes. And the first one is just the whole studio environment of those songs being written, crafted, tweaked, agonized over to get to the end result. And you can see the tensions between the band and the producer and different musicians as they're struggling and grappling with these songs, just to get them to a sound that they feel is authentically theirs, but still taking the band to somewhere different so they could, and what an amazing result, and arguably an album that then took them to even greater heights as a result. So anyway, really, really great track. So go and listen to The Unforgiven if you don't know it. It's a brilliant song.
Superb, really great. Cool, right. Well, my next song is again, kind of thinking chronologically through me kind of growing up and learning guitar and listening to music and finding new things. I'm 17 years old at this point. I've still pretty much from being 13 only really been listening to Clapton and blues and stuff like that. And I haven't really broadened my horizons, but I'm reading guitar magazines and I'm learning more about, other people. And I'm working now as well. I've been doing an apprenticeship and earning some money. And one of my favourite things to do around this time of my life is to go down to like Our Price or Andy's Records in town in Wigan, where I grew up, and buy CDs, sometimes randomly based on what something looks like, but I wanted to buy a particular live album that I'd heard was just superb, and it was Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy, which is it's just one of the best live albums ever, even though it's not really a live album. They overdubbed a lot of stuff afterwards, and corrected things in the studio. But there's a song on that called Still in Love with You, which I think is a Phil Lynott song rather than a Thin Lizzy song. I could be wrong. Should have fact-checked it, really. But that's one of the first songs I listened to and was really taken by melodic guitar playing. In particular, Scott Gorham's guitar solo, which is the second guitar solo at the end of the song, it's quite a long guitar solo. It's a couple of minutes long, and it leads the song into the outro. And it's just beautiful. And I remember listening to that, and that was when I started going down a rock route and started listening to more Metallica and Thin Lizzy and AC/DC and people like that, and but still enjoying listening to guitarists that obviously had a blues influence as well. And that whole album is just full of just stunning guitar playing, brilliant singing, thunderous bass playing, because Phil Lynnett's bass playing was just astounding. He played with a pick on a precision bass, really loud. It's kind of Lemmy style almost, but superb singer, incredible songwriter. And Thin Lizzy have obviously had a lot of really great guitarists in the band. Eric Bell, Gary Moore, Scott Gorham, Brian Robertson. That live album is Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham. And the interplay between the two on all those songs is just superb. The harmony stuff they do together. That whole album is just, a seminal rock album for me. That's where I draw a lot of my rock influences from when I think about rock guitar playing. But that song, Still in Love with You, the outro solo by Scott Gorham is just a thing of beauty. Really beautiful melodic playing, not fast or shreddy or anything. He's just playing just fantastically. And that for me is a watershed moment as well, because that's the first time I can recall listening to a melodic guitarist and thinking differently about, approaching a solo over a song and just enjoying a really great song. So that's choice number 2 for me.
Well, I must say, mate, I need to go and listen to that track. I mean, I know the classic Thin Lizzy numbers that most people have kind of can reel off, but I must say I'm not entirely familiar with that song, so I can't wait to go and listen to that this afternoon. And
that whole album, just Live and Dangerous, Thin Lizzy is just, it's one of, I mean, if we may in the future do a podcast about our favourite live albums and favourite live music, and that's on there for me, along with, various others. It's a really, really great album.
And you mentioned guitar harmonies, right? That band, even considering the different guitarists and things they've had, they are well known for the really beautifully done guitar harmonies and double layered kind of guitar tracks that they used to do. That really, people, if you do like a Thin Lizzy cover, you've got to get those right, because that's what people need to hear.
Exactly that. I mean, we used to do, when we were in Roadrunner, do you remember there was a period of time when we used to do a song called Rosalie, which was a Thin Lizzy song, and that's on the album. That's on the Live and Dangerous album. But yes, that whole album's full of fantastic harmony, and yet that is the Thin Lizzy sound, really. I think for a lot of people, when they think of Thin Lizzy, they think of those harmony guitar parts like you've got in, Boys Are Back in Town, right? Rosalie, like you said, Southbound, Jailbreak has got brilliant guitar harmonies as well. But the best for me is Waiting for an Alibi from the Black Rose album. That in fact, that Black Rose album is another one to go and listen to. But coming back to the song choice, Still in Love with You, brilliant, absolutely super.
Cool, man, good choice. All right, where shall I go from here? So, in terms of my next choice, I had to pick a Guns N' Roses track because I'm a huge GNR fan,
of course.
And of course, as any guitar player growing up, Sweet Child of Mine was the quintessential solo to kind of play live, and still is, and I love it, and I can never get bored or tired of playing that song live. And it is just a great track, and it's probably one of those guitar solos that everyone, when they go and watch a covers band play it or listen to that track, the solo is probably equally a main part of that song as the vocals and singing along to key parts of it. It's one of there's plenty of songs like that, but where the solo is kind of like, people anticipate the solo, exactly. As well, even if you're not a guitar player. But that's not the song that I've chosen from GNR, because A, that would be too obvious, and B, as much as I love that solo, it's probably not the GNR solo that had the biggest kind of impact on my playing and outlook towards music. And the track that did, and the solo actually in this case that did, is off a track called Double Talking Jive, which is a very heavy kind of rock track off their first Use Your Illusion album, I believe. But it's not even the studio version of that track. It's the live version that they play. And the reason that I love that track is again possibly as a link back to some of the classical kind of lessons and things that I had, but also this love that I have of flamenco guitar playing and that kind of Spanish sound, right? And on this track, and it is on the studio album for sure, but just in a very on the studio version, but in a very much abridged format, is this guitar solo. So, I mean, the song is a classic kind of rock riff in E, nothing particularly innovative. But when it gets to the solo, the whole dynamics of the song change, and Slash is playing in this kind of E Phrygian kind of dominant Spanish kind of sound, and it really changes the whole feel and tone of the song. And when you see him play it live, and they extend that solo, so there is a live performance of Guns N' Roses, a concert in Paris to a huge stadium audience in Paris, outdoor performance, live in Paris in 1992, which again, I had on VHS because I recorded it live off the TV at the time, and I wore out that tape. I kid you not. My sister still talks about the days where I used to sit in front of the TV, literally watching and rewinding and rewinding and rewinding. And
that's kind of sweet though.
It is. Oh, wow, yeah.
People don't have that experience now, right? People are sitting in front of YouTube and just watch other people teach them how to, I still prefer now to go through that experience of listening to something over and over till I get it. I still find that more comfortable than pulling up a tab or a lesson or something. And, I think it's something we've been through. Yeah, no, but you're right, Matt, because we didn't have YouTube or Spotify or anything like that. Oh God, we sound like old farts now, right? Back in our day, electricity had barely been turned on. That's it, yeah. To learn the song before the candle burnt out,
That's it. Yeah. Well, after fashioning new guitar strings out of catgut, literally by dissecting the household pet. No, I mean, we're not that old, but yeah, I remember rewinding on VHS tape this live recording that I'd done of this concert, and I still to this day I've scoured and periodically do it every couple of years, scoured the internet in the hopes that the original footage of that concert has been properly mastered and laid down in high definition onto a tape, onto a DVD or Blu-ray, and it hasn't. I've got a bootleg DVD copy of it again, which somebody has kind of chucked onto DVD, but it still looks like it's been filmed on a potato and recorded like through something horrific. But and there are versions of this available on YouTube as well, but the quality is so poor. But Guns N' Roses live in Paris, 1992, double talking jive. The guitar solo is, to me, a tour de force in live rock guitar playing. His playing looks effortless and so relaxed, and he's in this kind of world of his own, playing to this huge stadium audience, blisteringly fast licks, but with this real beautiful Spanish-influenced Phrygian type tones, which is a departure from his normal kind of pentatonic shenanigans. Yeah. But shows that he does have that versatility there, and that solo breaks down in terms of really fast, heavy rock phrasing into some lighter, cleaner bits. So it's a bit of a virtuoso performance if you're a Slash fan. But for me, that is one solo where I just still to this day get inspired every time I see or listen to particularly that live version of it. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, a great choice. And I'm going to do the same thing as what you said about the Thin Lizzy track. I'm going to go away and listen to that this afternoon because I haven't heard that before. And I'm going to go and bask in the glory of Slash later on. Actually, that sounds terrible.
That sounds like some bizarre kink fetish, I think. Please don't Google that to try and find the live video that I'm talking about, because otherwise you're going to be in a world of pain.
Dear.
Yeah.
Not safe for work. Yeah.
Not safe for work. Yeah. GNR Live, 1992, live in Paris. Double Talking Jive.
Fantastic.
What's your next track, mate?
I'm going to give you my last one, which is probably not a surprise, but I'm fast forwarding again chronologically to now. I'm in music college. I've moved down south. I've gone to the ACM in Guildford, and I'm learning about. I'm trying to kind of get my head around music theory. I'm having the classic thoughts that a lot of guitarists have: is, do I need this? You know, do I need to turn up for this class music theory? I just want to play guitar, kind of thing. And then I get introduced to Steely Dan, which. As you know, I'm not necessarily interested in jazz, but the thing that Steely Dan did is they put their jazz inflections and their jazz kind of sensibilities into some really cool kind of yacht rock, you know, pop stuff. And they had some big hits, you know, like Reeling in the Years, Do It Again from their first album, and Kid Charlemagne from the Royal Scam album. And I remember listening to that album, and we were talking about various guitarists in one of the classes, and I really liked Larry Carlton's guitar solos on Kid Charlemagne. I thought they were fantastic. But the reason why that is kind of a watershed moment in my playing is not just because it was a great solo, but you've probably heard me talk a lot when we've talked about guitar playing, about playing over changes and playing to the chords and why that's important. So that's kind of the patient zero of that way of playing for me, that song. When you analyse what he's playing, you realise how simple the approach actually is. I mean, it's quite a complex guitar solo. It's not easy to play. It takes some practice to play what Larry Carlton's playing over that. But when you break it down, you know, if you learn the chords that he's playing over and then you analyse what he's just playing notes from those chords a lot of the time. And so that was a real kind of eureka moment for me in my guitar playing, which was, you know, that was then when I went, oh, theory really is important. You don't have to learn theory to be able to play guitar, but you know what? It's kind of like, you know, you're arming yourself with information that you can use. So why not do that? And so Kid Charlemagne by Steely Dan, but in particular it's Larry Carlton, who, you know, is one of the most prolific session guitarists of all time. He played the guitar solos on that song, not all the guitar solos on the album. There's Dean Parks as well, and I think some other guitarists on that album. That album's full of fantastic guitar playing. Haitian Divorce is brilliant. Caves of Altamira. There's some fantastic songs on that album which are full of really cool guitar playing. But that one in particular, Kid Charlemagne, I think it's track number 1 on the album. Just superb guitar playing, and that's number 3 for me for kind of watershed moment guitar songs.
Oh, there's so many cool things in what you've said there around, you know, light bulb moments where the application of theory kind of clicks with what you're trying to achieve on the guitar in a way that you get recognised. That's a really good point, well made. I love the fact that you talked about them as kind of, you know, yacht rock, which in my head is kind of easygoing, almost background listening stuff, but which to some extent Steely Dan is, until you then try and learn one of their songs and you go, what are these chord shapes?
Exactly.
I've never experienced these chord shapes before. And, you know, then, I mean, I did a couple of Steely Dan tracks a few years ago for a band I was kind of just messing around with. But even though that band didn't really turn into anything, I always take from it the fact that I got schooled on Steely Dan and what that, you know, band was all about. And actually, they're like a sleeper band, right? They're really great pop tracks, but then you kind of look into it and you go, these guys are incredible musicians with really complex arrangements and chord choices. Yeah.
And I think part of that is because they weren't really a band. It was just I can't remember the names. Anyway, there was 2 guys. My mind's just gone completely blank. But Donald Fagen and I think Walter Becker. I could be wrong. Donald Fagen and some other guy. That sounds terrible because I know the other guy's dead now. But it was really just those two guys and then good session musicians. You know, a lot of the albums you're listening to are people like Bernard Purdie, Steve Gadd on drums, you know, Larry Carlton and, you know, Dean Pat. It was the best session guys at the time. That's why they sounded so good, because they wrote and sung brilliant songs, but they got the best musicians in, you know, on the scene to play. And, you know, listening back to Steely Dan back catalogue is, you know, their first album was Jeff Porcaro from Toto.
I almost thought you'd make it through a whole episode. And in my head, I was thinking he's done 3 songs and not one of them is Lukather or Toto. And then when you mentioned Steely Dan, I thought, okay, oh no, he's mentioning Larry Carlton. And in my head, I thought, didn't Steve Lukather? I don't know. There's so much we need to fact check about this episode. But in my head, I was like, didn't Steve Lukather want to be in Steely Dan? Did I remember that or did I not remember that? I wonder if he's going to mention that. And then you started talking about excellent bands with great pop songs and session musicians. And I thought, oh, he's getting so close. He's like literally on the edge of Toto.
I'm on the edge of Toto all the time.
And then you tipped yourself over.
There we go. Anyway, let's give us your last one, and then we'll wrap up.
All right, mate. My last one is about tone, about pure unadulterated tone. So for me, again, still relatively in my formative years, probably in my 20s at this stage. And that's not to say in the last couple of decades since I was in my 20s that I haven't been influenced or inspired by great tracks. I have, but for me, continuing in terms of milestones and having been on a very kind of clear, you know, path with rock and metal and you know, and at the time as well, you know, a lot of hip hop, a lot of R&B. There was some great pop stuff coming out at that whole time. Then starting to get into the blues a bit more is a track by Stevie Ray Vaughan called Lenny. And
goosebumps,
you know,
immediate goosebumps.
Do you know what? The fact that you've said that kind of validates my choice for me, because do you know what? I quickly listened to all of these tracks this morning. I'd mentally made a list, right? Just did it very quickly. And then before we kind of started our conversation this morning, I just quickly went and had a listen just to say, you know, are they the right choices I've made? And exactly to your point, how many times have we heard Lenny by Stevie Ray? It probably into the hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands. And I goosebumps straight away with that track this morning. And I just thought, yeah, didn't even need to listen to all of it. I was like, yeah, completely validated. So for me, as somebody that had been out there gigging with a Les Paul copy and a cheap Marshall at the time, and all those saturated rock tones and trying to play Double Talking Jive by GNR and, you know, getting lost in Metallica numbers, to all of a sudden discover Stevie Ray Vaughan and his guitar playing and the legend around his guitar playing and the monstrous tone and all of that. And, you know, seminal tracks from that Texas Flood album, Pride and Joy and Mary Had a Little Lamb and, you know, all of that great stuff. But then to be stopped dead in my tracks and just get that goosebump feeling. And that's related to tone. And of course his playing and lick choice is wonderful and beautiful in terms of phrasing on that track, which I think was an ode to his girlfriend or wife, wife at the time.
Yeah.
But it's one of those tracks that I've stolen a few licks from, and obviously the main kind of melody line. But not one that I've ever learnt note for note, because it's a long track and it's, you know, it's one of those tracks that I almost don't want to learn it note for note because it will spoil some of the magic of it for me. But I've stolen a few of the licks. But for me, this track is all about tone. Then that clean, overtly clean, but with a slight kind of dirtier kind of nuance to it as he digs in, that builds kind of dynamically in that song with his phrasing, and just, you know, the overall piece of orchestration is just, it just stops you in your tracks and gives you goosebumps. Still, that tone.
Oh, it's just astounding. I mean, I could even think of like, even if I think of the song now, I can even think of the pickup choices he's making in certain areas. You know, like certain areas where he's flicking to the neck pickup and you get that really woody sound. You know, it is a tone song, isn't it? Completely a tone song. You're absolutely right. You know, that is such a great. I'm gonna probably listen to that on repeat all afternoon.
Honestly, it's just a choice, isn't it? And I've heard you play bits of it. And did you learn that one note?
I did have to learn it for. I
chose.
When I was doing my degree, we had to do like a performance exam where we had to pick songs and perform them, and there had to be a theme. And my theme was people's names. So I did Lenny from Stevie Ray Vaughan. Cool. There was a couple of other songs. I think I did Song for George by Eric Johnson on acoustic and Roxanne.
Oh, cool. Yeah, great track. Great track.
But yeah, I mean, I had to learn Lenny, and there's parts of it I couldn't play. A couple of little runs and things which I just couldn't quite get right, but you kind of did them in your own way at the time. Kind of like we always do, right? But that song is just an epic piece of music. Yeah,
and tonally, it just, for me, that is that sound that went on to inspire others, right? You know, you can hear it in Mayer's playing. You can hear it by anyone that's ever been influenced by Stevie Ray Vaughan, which is pretty much every guitar player. But as tone choice, try and spend some time trying to get that tone out of your guitar. And you'll be very well rewarded with a tone that you'll use for so many other things. But yeah, he nailed it on that one.
He really did. Matt, what a great choice and a perfect place to end it for this week. I mean, those are all fantastic songs. I'm going to go away and listen to the Guns N' Roses track. I'm going to listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan on repeat this afternoon. Fantastic stuff. Looking forward to it.
I'm going to go into some Thin Lizzy, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Do it. Live and Dangerous, and actually the Black Rose or Rosine Dube, I think, is because it's kind of named in Irish as well. That's a great album. A lot of really great guitar tracks on that. Awesome. Enjoy it.
Thanks, buddy, and you, man. Lovely to chat to you today.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a good laugh.
We'll do it again soon, mate.
Awesome. Have a cracking week, buddy. I'll speak to you later on.
Yeah, take care, Matt.
Ta-da, mate. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Another really interesting conversation this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Come back for more next week from the Guitar Smarts team. Come say hello to us on our social media pages. And remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss a show. Thanks again and see you soon.